Since the Premier League began in 1992, there have only been 7 different winners in 30 years. Manchester United, Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester City, Blackburn Rovers, Leicester City, and Liverpool. Man United has had the most success with 13 titles in the 28 seasons so far. Think about that. Only one team has won almost half of the available championships in the English Premier League. And the story is the same everywhere you look. In Germany, Bayern Munich and Dortmund have won every single league title except for 3 since 1998. In Italy, AC Milan, Inter Milan, and Juventus have won the last 22 seasons. In France, PSG has won 8 of the last 10, and Barcelona and Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid have won the last 19 in La Liga. So on and so on it goes all across the European continent. Small leagues are as likely to be dominated by a few teams as the big leagues. Germany, the country with the largest population and the greatest wealth in our sample, looks rather like the tiny Luxembourg or the Faroe Islands. Dominance is often associated with the absence of competition, but not when it comes to football. There are, for example, 27 professional football teams within a 50-mile radius of Manchester United. If fans didn't like United, there are plenty of alternatives. Often, rivals play in the same stadium. Bayern and TSV 1860, Inter Milan and AC Milan are 2 of the most notable examples. And if Spanish fans are looking for variety, there are 4 other professional football clubs in Madrid to choose from. Dominance through monopoly or the absence of competition usually occurs because the scale of the investment required is so great that not many other teams can enter. But dominance also occurs in markets where competition is perfectly feasible. And that's what we see today. So why are leagues dominated by one or a very small handful of teams while nobody else in the division stands a chance? Since the inception of financial fair play in 2011, the issues have only deepened. A rule that is supposed to keep teams solvent and working within their means is now working to strengthen the iron fist the wealthiest clubs have in their leagues. Now, the current state of soccer needs a foundation to build on. We need to get a sense of what happened to the historically relevant clubs that have since fallen completely off the race for a league title. Did you know Marseille, Porto, Celtic, Feyenoord, even Nottingham Forest, Hamburg, and Steaua Bucharest are all Champions League winners? Nottingham Forest seems as good a place as any to start. A deeply ingrained and locally supported club who have just won their place back in the Premier League. Forest has won 1 league title, 2 FA Cups, 4 League Cups, 1 FA Charity Shield, 2 European Cups, and 1 UEFA Super Cup. They're also the only club to win the Champions League and play in their country's 3rd division. A consistent theme that we'll find with these clubs, though, is that they've had a period of time where they overextended their funds. This was either to claw back to the top division or compete against some of the other wealthier clubs in the division at the time, which eventually leads to them spiraling into a cycle of spending and debt. After Nottingham Forest tried to quickly claw their way back to the top division and failing, they were faced with huge debts, which reduced Forest's ability to sign new players, and by December of 2001, Forest were reported as losing over £100,000 every week, and their financial outlook was worsened by the collapse of ITV Digital, which left Forest and many other Football League clubs in severe financial difficulties. The stories are similar everywhere. Hamburger SV had a golden era from 1980 to 1986, but are now toiling in the 2 Bundesliga. Marseille's history is rife with bribery and scandal, and it would be hard to see a team from Scotland or Romania finding success against the European giants in the 21st century, but that's exactly what happened. The unluckiest or least diligent of these clubs have locked their destinies to the negative cycle of spending. This cycle creates an unsustainable environment that provides space for billionaire investors and Saudi investment funds to further their control on the future of club ownership. Now, it needs to be said that there is a widening gaps of clubs at the top of spending versus clubs with historical support. Now, even though Celtic can spend 50 times more than their next opponent like Aberdeen in the Scottish Premiership, While Man City can spend 50 times more internationally than Celtic can. And in 2009, UEFA agreed to new financial fair play rules, which were installed at the beginning of the 2011 season to reduce overspending and doping of the smaller clubs from outside investment. When announcing the new legislation, former UEFA president Michael Platini said, "50% of clubs are losing money and this is an increasing trend. We needed to stop this downward spiral. They have spent more than they have earned in the past and haven't paid their debts. We don't want to kill or hurt the clubs. On the contrary, we want to help them in the market. The teams who play in their tournaments have unanimously agreed to our principles. Living within your means is the basis of accounting, but it hasn't been the basis of football for years now. The owners were asking for rules because they can't implement them themselves. Many of them have had it with shoveling money into clubs, and more money you put into clubs, the harder it is to sell at a profit." Now, the intention of this rule obviously seemed to be in the right place. It makes soccer clubs more sustainable, and it places a priority on balancing debts and expenditures. It makes it more difficult to spend more than the other teams in their leagues, or so they thought. Now, based on the name, you may think that financial fair play is about creating equitable landscapes in the soccer world to compete in transfers and the contract market. But that's not really the case. Financial fair play are a set of rules and regulations that are supposed to help clubs not overspend based on their revenues. An unintended consequence of these rules allow for wider gaps in teams with larger revenues, and you can see where this is going. A competitive advantage already held by the best generational teams that had large fan bases, like Manchester United or Real Madrid, also provided opportunities for teams with wealthy benefactors like Manchester City, Paris Saint-Germain, and now Newcastle United to stake their claim. Despite its flaws, financial fair play was able to mostly curtail the cold practice of a leverage buyout. Leverage buyouts, or LBOs, happen when a new owner buys a club with borrowed funds and then loads those borrowed funds onto the club, then slowly pays off their debts with dividends made from owning the club. The Glazers at Man United, along with Liverpool, Portsmouth, Hull City, and Derby County, are all victims of leverage buyouts. The soccer world has seen less and less of these types of buyouts, specifically because of financial fair play regulations. Now, one practice financial fair play has not been able to curtail is that of wealthy benefactors. A number of clubs across Europe were historically in a position to spend substantially more than they earned as a result of the benevolence of their owners, who made substantial financial gifts to the club, either by paying off existing debt, providing direct injections of cash, or issuing extra shares and giving loans which are later written off. Such a practice adversely affects the market by creating wage and transfer inflation, as well as encouraging other clubs to spend more than they can afford in an effort to remain competitive. In Ligue 1, Paris Saint-Germain became the richest club in France and one of the richest clubs in the world after Qatar Investment Authority became the majority shareholder of PSG by purchasing 70% of the shares in 2011. The same year, financial fair play was instituted, and effectively purchasing the club altogether in a deal worth only 50 million euros. The purchase covered an estimated 15 to 20 million euros in debt and losses of 19 million euros from the 2010-11 season. PSG then turned around with their new wealthy owners and splashed a French record 108 million euros to be the biggest spenders in the world for the 2011-12 season. Since then, PSG generated the two most expensive transfers ever, Neymar for $240 million and Mbappe for $200 million. Each transfer window for PSG is all you need to see to know wealthy benefactors have inflated the market and made it more difficult for even medium to large size clubs to compete for the world's best players. So is there any hope for smaller clubs in these leagues? I mean, Lille recently won Ligue 1 in 2021-22 season, but they quickly fell back to mid-table. Leicester City won the Premier League in 2016 and have now solidified their place as a top half team in the Premier League. But those stories are few and far between and becoming rarer by the day. One of the major criticisms of financial fair play is the possibility of solidifying the so-called big clubs which generate largest revenues and profits, which means they can consequently spend bigger transfer fees and contracts. Qualification and participation in the Champions League is regarded as a lucrative affair and can earn clubs up to $80 million in prize money and television rights a season if a club makes it to the final. A club only has to play 13 matches from the group stages to reach the final. In comparison, finishing bottom of the Premier League is now worth $200 million, but has won over 38 matches. Those figures are still only a sliver of money clubs can use to validate their spending. Real Madrid charges $80 million a season for their shirt sponsor, and Spotify have just signed a comprehensive $77 million deal with Barcelona for naming rights to Camp Nou and to be Barcelona's shirt sponsor. The era continues. Investment brings success, which brings more fans, which brings more sponsors, which gives clubs more money to spend on the open transfer market. This effectively creates a lockout of other clubs not already at the elite status. Leagues are dominated by one or a few teams. It's a vicious cycle that keeps larger clubs expanding and smaller clubs out of the biggest competitions. Strap in for another decade of domination by the Goliaths of the world that is devoid of any Davids that can compete with them. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel as it helps immensely for the YouTube algorithm, and consider supporting on Patreon for as little as $2 a month so I can make more videos like this. I'll see everyone next time on It's Called Soccer. Peace.